Welcome to Legal Talk with Robin Bond. I'm your host, Robin Bond. This is the show where we break down complex legal topics and make them work for you. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that affects millions of people living in this country, yet it's something that very few of us know very much about. And that is, what is the process to legally become a U.S. citizen? What does that process look like, and how long does it take? I think you are going to be shocked by the answers. We hear a lot of political debate about immigration. People throw around the terms like illegal, undocumented, open borders, but very few people, if you were to quiz them, could answer the questions to you about, well, what does it legally take to become a U.S. citizen? What does that path look like? What does the process look like? What are the hoops you have to jump through? And we are going to break that down for you today. So I am not going to do it because I'm an employment lawyer, as we all know, and this is way out of my wheelhouse, but I have a wonderful guest that will help us. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, though, because the first step in this process is getting what we call a green card. Oh, we all hear about green cards, of course, lawful permanent residency. But how easy is it to get that card? Where do you get it? Who do you apply for? Where? When you're in your home country, when you're here? I understand from our expert that just getting that card can take years, if not decades, depending on your country of origin and your circumstances. And that's before the citizenship clock even begins to run. Then once you have your green card, you have to hold it for at least 5 years, or 3 if you are fortunate enough to be married to a U.S. citizen. You have to have lived continuously in the U.S. and at least been physically present here half that time. After that, you can finally apply. So you apply, you fill out your application. You're probably going to wait another 5 years. And then you get to take your oath of allegiance if you pass the background check, the biometrics, the English proficiency test, and the civics test. And I bet there are more than a few native-born Americans who could not pass that civics proficiency test. So when someone says, just come here legally, before you start engaging in that debate, it's going to be worthwhile for you to have a little bit of knowledge about what you're speaking and understanding what illegal really looks like. Because there's a lot of years in this process where you're not yet a legal U.S. citizen, but maybe decades of time are passing where you are in that process. And we're going to see how protected are you at any stage of that process. The images we see today of people being swept off the street, put into warehouses, this has been very shocking. And I'm curious, is this something we've ever done before? Is this totally new? How do we look at what's happening today? And I, again, am very, very fortunate to welcome our guest today, Peter Antone. Peter is the founding partner of an immigration law firm in Farmington Hills, Michigan, Antone, Casagrande Adwers. He is highly regarded. His accolades are many if you check him on the internet. His practice focuses on representing individuals and helping businesses in very complex immigration matters nationwide. He is a strategic attorney. His approach is helping individuals and international companies navigate through this process. Peter earned his Bachelor of Engineering degree at the University of Baghdad in his home country of Iraq, and his Master's of Engineering in England. He is a citizen of the world, but is fortunate to call himself a U.S. citizen now, went to law school here, and tells me he's grateful every day to say that the U.S. of A. is his home. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, as a good way to kind of dive into this topic, because we have many areas to cover, I have a viewer question, and I'm going to ask Peter to respond. If we could put it on the screen, please. Carol Marks of Philadelphia says, what does the designation of temporary protected status really mean?
Temporary protected status is a designation given by the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to certain foreign nationals who are in the United States, whom our government believes that it would not be safe for them to currently return to their home country. So their home country could be experiencing some sort of a disaster. It could be natural disaster, earthquakes. It could be flooding. It could be hurricanes, or it could be man-made. It could be civil war or wars that makes it unsafe for them to return to their home country. So what our government does is that to protect them from deportation, from removal, we allow them to stay in this country temporarily. Okay, and it could be for a year and a half. During that time, we also give them the opportunity to work so they can support themselves. However, temporary protected status does not in of itself grant any additional legal status to those individuals. And when the situation in their home country becomes stable and our government decides that there is no more danger if they return to their home country, then our government would be able to remove that temporary protected status from them, and they are required to return to their home country unless individually they have other basis for staying.
Thank you so much for that answer. That was really helpful. You other viewers, here's how you can submit your questions to Legal Talk with Robin Bond.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
All right, let's get into the questions and answers, Peter. You were talking about home countries and how some home countries are unsafe and you can get a temporary protected status. But where do you apply for U.S. citizenship first? Do you have to come to the USA first and then apply, or can you apply from your home country? And to whom do you apply?
No, you cannot apply from your home country. You have to be living in the United States in a lawful permanent status, normally called the green card. And you have to be living here most of the time around 5 years, sometimes 3 years, and you have to then apply to become a naturalized citizen. The process for getting the green card could take a few years. It could also take several decades. So it is really a pretty long, lengthy, and very complicated process.
You know, it seems like it would be. And I'm thinking if I'm in a war-torn country, a place where I'm, desperate to find safety for my children, what do I do? How do I get this green card from a foreign country when I maybe don't know anything about the U.S.? How do I take step one?
Well, I mean, in that scenario, if there is trouble in one's home country and they want to come or leave their country to come here, they will need, in that particular case, to apply for a refugee status. They need to find a location that the U.S. government designates somewhere in the world as allowing the U.S. consulate in that location to accept refugee from applicants. Now, having a civil war is not a basis for applying for refugees. Refugees is based on if somebody can prove that they have a well-founded fear of returning to their home country or staying in their home country based on a protected ground, such as discrimination or persecution based on gender, religion, political opinion, and so on. So, and unfortunately, our country we have limits on how many refugees we accept every year. And therefore, if that is full or if the application is denied, they need to find another country to go to. The normal process of getting a green card is really is a very, very long process. So if somebody is in a country where there are trouble, the normal procedures for getting a green card, which could take decades, would not be applicable actually in that case.
Well, yeah, it seems like I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, to get a green card, I guess I have to go to a consulate and apply. But are they going to ask me, well, do you have a job? So is which is first, the chicken or the egg? Do I have to have the job to get the green card? Do I need the green card to get the job? Do I have to have a relative willing to vouch for me to come to this country? I mean, I just don't even know how to take step one. What would you advise?
Yeah, well, there are three main ways to get a green card, three major ways. One is very close family connection relationships, such as husband, wife, son, parent, or siblings. That's in the family side. However, just because you have a close family person doesn't mean you can apply and come right away. A sibling, as an example, applying for their brother and sisters may take about 20 years.
Oh my God.
So this is, I can tell you my own experience. I came to this country in 78 with my mom and my sister, and the process then took about a year. The same process today will take 30 years. Okay, so that is the family side. Now, if somebody want to come on the work side, they need to find an employer willing to sponsor them. Not every job qualifies. The job itself has to be above a certain sophistication. The employer has to prove that they cannot find an available, willing American worker willing to do the job for the wage. And then they have to test the market. It takes years for approval. And even if there is an approval, it may take few more years for someone to catch the line. So it could be many years, even for work-based green card to become to fruition. It may take 10, 12, 15 years. The third main way is asylum. If somebody is able to come to the U.S., and they have a well-founded fear to return to their home country on a legitimate basis, they may apply for asylum. And if they are approved, they can get to apply for the green card a year after the approval of the asylum. There are other ways to get a green card, but they are minor compared to the three ones that I mentioned, like the lottery system and few other situations. Sometimes we are in a country and we help. Like in Afghanistan, we helped some of the people that helped us get a green card once we left that country. But the main ways to get a green card is through work, family, or asylum. And in most of the cases, the process takes decades.
That is just shocking to me. So, do you think this is part of why so many people are just out of desperation coming here in an undocumented status? Because who can wait 20 or 30 years? And why do you have to wait 30? Why is it taking that long, Peter?
The reason is this. The law we have today was legislated for the most part in 1952. And then Congress designated certain quotas for different categories. Well, at that time, not too many people apparently wanted to immigrate as today. That's why I was able to immigrate with my mom and my sister in 78, and the whole process took like 9 months. We have the same quota today, but far more people want to immigrate, and that creates a huge backlog, creating a waiting of 10 to 15 years in many categories. That is just the situation. Now, one of the things I need to mention is we have a problem with fertility rates. All the studies show that our fertility rate is going to be in the negative. We're going to be losing population if we don't provide better immigration. And of course, if we lose population, that would affect our future economic growth. So that's really a big problem. What we need, Robin, we need Congress to sit down and come up with a compromise to have a proper immigration reform. Unfortunately, as you know, in my opinion anyway, Congress is paralyzed. Each side are not there. There's no willing to compromise and find a solution that is good for our country as a whole. And so we are in a paralyzed situation.
Yeah, right. This is,
Many,
I think it's very helpful for people to know, because I, for one, had no idea it could take you 20 or 30 years. And then, I completely understand the desperation of people. And then when you get here, there's new rules, right? You have to demonstrate moral character, and just not having a criminal record isn't good enough. Is that correct? And the civics test you have to pass. Do you think most of us could pass that, Peter? I don't know.
I read that test, and I have to admit, I'm an attorney. I've been doing this for 30 years. There are some questions that I found very difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But on the good side, on the good part, the test is not analytical. It is more of an information. So if somebody spends the effort to learn, they should be able to pass it. Now, remember, that test is not for getting the green card. That test is for if somebody who has a green card wants to become a U.S. citizen, then they need to pass that test in order to become a U.S. citizen. But it's not a requirement for getting the green card.
Okay, but Peter, let's just say I've got my green card, but I don't pass the English language test. I don't have passed the background check, or, I fall down on something. And what do? Do they ship me out, or what happens to me?
No. I mean, assuming that there is no criminal issue involved, the main issue is not passing the test. By the way, my mom became a U.S. citizen when she was 84. She passed since then, but she had to study for the test, and she was very. She took the effort to do it, and she passed after studying it for a few months. So if you regarding the test, somebody needs to study for it to be able to pass. If a green card holder doesn't have a criminal record and has a good moral character, and have satisfied the language, the civic test requirement, they should be able to get naturalized.
Well, we certainly hope so. But at what point in this decades-long process, let's just say I haven't passed all my tests yet, but I have my green card, I have a job, I've had somebody vouch for me. At what point can the U.S. government tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, you haven't yet made it all the way through this 20-plus year-long process, I'm deporting you? Can they do that? Or at what point can they do it, or can they not do it?
The Immigration Service could arrest a foreign national if they are out of status. So there are what you mentioned is two scenarios. Somebody who's applying for a green card who doesn't yet have a green card. The process takes many, many years. In those years, this foreign nationals is required to keep lawful status in the U.S. And if they fall out of status, they should really leave the country and not be here if they're out of status, because otherwise immigration could arrest them and put them into deportation process or removal process. If somebody already has a green card, they have more protection, unless the government discovers that the application for a green card was based on fraud or was fraudulent, or if they commit a crime, a serious crime, then they could lose their green card, and they could be deported.
And I've heard, and one doesn't even know what to believe anymore, but I've heard that people who are in this status, like waiting for a green card, will go to do what they call check-ins. I don't know what those are, but you go to check in to prove you're still, dotting your I's and crossing your T's in this country. And they are at that point deported. Is that something that can happen to you, or is it just because, hey, you don't have a green card, we can do this to you? Or do they have to have some other reason to deport people or put them in warehouses?
This happens mainly for people who do not yet have a green card.
Yes.
But the government sometimes allow people to stay for a certain period of time, maybe to correct their situation. And in the meantime, they need to check with ICE or with Immigration Service every 6 months or every year. But in those cases, the government could arrest them to say that, wait a minute, we've given you a break before, we don't want to give you a break anymore, we don't want to postpone this process any longer, we're going to arrest you. If they're arrested, if the foreign national is arrested, the options they have is they, of course, should try to get a lawyer right away to
Yeah.
see if there's a way they can help themselves. They need to pay the lawyer themselves. The lawyer could ask for a bond hearing. Sometimes the bond hearing is not available. And then the foreign national in those cases have the choice either to wait for a hearing or to try to leave voluntarily by telling ICE that they want to leave and do something like a self-deport.
Yeah, okay, but if there's a huge backlog to get a hearing and they're throwing people into warehouses, I mean, do you have any protections? I mean, if you're detained by ICE, do you have the right to a lawyer? I mean, and I guess there's no speedy hearing process for these detainees.
Yeah, if somebody is arrested by ICE, they certainly have the right to. By the way, they have a constitutional right like everybody else. They have a right not to say anything. They have the right to ask for a lawyer, to see a lawyer of their choice. They have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Of course, they have to ask for a hearing. Now, every case is different. For example, somebody could have a very old removal proceeding that is concluded against them, and then they get married to a citizen, but when they try to correct themselves, the old removal judgment could come into play and they could be deported anyway. So to be honest with you, it's a pretty complicated process. And everyone, I mean, it's a very, very complicated, and people do need to consult with their lawyer regarding their specific situation. But I do agree with you that the environment is far more strict than prior years.
Yeah, and how many people are detained in these warehouses? Do you have any idea? Because I haven't heard much about it lately, and I didn't know if you're seeing, fewer people are being detained or more people are being detained. What are you seeing?
To my knowledge, far more people are being detained than in prior administrations. I think a detention center could contain, I believe, up to 70,000 people.
My God.
Yeah, I really don't know the exact, but that's what I've read, and I'm not surprised with all what's going on that there would be more bigger detention centers.
Have you ever seen this before?
Well, we have not seen as a country a deportation centers to this current scale. We did have deportation centers under prior administrations, but they were not this big. And remember, also in the Second World War, we had the Japanese internment And by the way, ironically, I found that Ellis Island, which we all know as the place where immigrants were welcome, also had a detention center, but it was very small for those who were not allowed in. So we had detention centers throughout all of our history, but we haven't had it to the current scale that we have it today.
Right. And, like I think back to those days, like, I think life was certainly very hard for the people that came here 100 years ago, but I don't think they had to wait any 20 years. I think they signed in at Ellis Island and, got out and got going. So, there is a lot of debate right now about people who have lived here for years, worked honestly, paid taxes, raised American-born children, stayed out of trouble. Are they still subject to deportation if they haven't yet made it through the 20-year process? And, where does the law stand on that, Peter?
Yes, if somebody is removable, if somebody entered, like, for example, without inspection, then living for many years in the U.S. Without any trouble, having U.S. born kids, never having an issue with the law, paying taxes.
Yes.
All of that does not make them automatically legal. They need to find a way to make themselves legal. And of course, that includes application to the government. And if the application is denied, they could very well be deported. But just being good people, good working people all the time, doesn't really provide right away anyway. It doesn't provide an avenue to become legal. And by the way, not every case takes 10 to 20 years. There are cases that takes shorter, a few years. And I mean, the government is not purposely, I don't believe, is making this a decades-long process. The problem is the law is very, very old. It's a 1952 law that we are living under, and we need immigration reform to make the law more compatible with today's reality.
Thank you. And I think that's something for an action item for all of us to write to our legislators and say, let's update this, 70-year-old law. So we're almost out of time. So I'd like to ask one final question. And if you could tell the average American, one thing they fundamentally misunderstood about our immigration system, whether they're on the left or the right, what would you tell that average American?
Yeah, well, most Americans that I meet say, why don't the illegals or the undocumented stand in line and come legally like my ancestors did? Honestly, it's a very, very legitimate question. The problem is for the most part, there is really no line anymore. And if there is a line, for the majority of people, it's very, very long, decades. Like I told you, I came with my family in 78. It took less than a year. The same process will take 30 years today. My uncle would apply to my mom now. It takes 20 years, and my mom would have to apply for me. It takes 10 years now. The whole thing took a year then. So the line is much longer, is not realistic. We need younger people to support our elderly. We need younger immigrants to work and contribute to Social Security. Our fertility rate is dropping. I think everybody agrees that we need, and immigrants needs to be vetted. I'm 100% with that. We need to know who's coming. We need to check them out. The problem is the system is extremely inefficient, and the inefficiency is creating all this entry of undocumented illegals that is compounding the problem. So the frustration is understood. The problem is the law is very old, and Congress.
We really appreciate that. And we're out of time. So I thank you so much for everything that you have done and all the information you have shared. It was extremely illuminating. I had no idea everything was this outdated and the lines were this long. You might not live long enough to make it through a legal line. Everybody, I hope this was really helpful, everyone. And my guest in June will be a mystery. Don't know just yet, but next week on Money Matters TV, the guest will be David Siegel, financial advisor. So thank you for joining us. I'll see you next month. Thank you.